Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the Cameras Los Angeles showroom in West Hollywood, and I'm here with Sonja Bertucci with her movie, A Hard World for Little Things. Let's take a look at a clip.
Children, I got lonesome. I figured we might play games.
Won't you tell us a story?
I might tell you.
Come on, children, come in.
Sonja, I'm very excited to have you here today, and thank you for sharing your film. I thoroughly enjoy it. I love experimental film. It's really fantastic. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Okay, so the film is about toys and the menacing threat or the menacing shadow of toys. And the film like, kind of exposes how the imagination is imbued with violence when it comes to toys. So, I mean, it's kind of a little abstract, but do you want me to continue?
Yeah, oh please, yeah.
The film is inspired by Charles Laughton, The Night of the Hunter, 1955, which is a mixture of fairy tale, gangster film, and noir film. And in this film, we see how childhood turns to imagination, you know, and confronted with adversity. So when a child, you know, encounters an enemy or adversity, usually it flies into an imaginary world. And that's what's happening in the film. And when I saw in his boutique or its exhibition space, when I saw all these objects, they were art objects coming from everywhere in the world, I thought, oh my God, what would a child, you know, do when he enters this store? And if he were to dramatize or make these toys interact with each other, what would it be? And I thought that, you know, any child who takes like a toy, this toy transforms into almost an object of adulthood. You know, it becomes like something to create violence or, you know, it's very much, the world of childhood is a very violent world. I don't know if you have kids. I don't, but I can see kids. And so I thought, okay, let's make this object interact. So this object that you hardly see in a film. And I was commissioned by the Echo Park Film Center, which is a very old institution, and they should be advertised because they do amazing work and amazing workshop to learn filmmaking. They do Super 8, 16, etc. And they asked me to shoot in Super 8. And you know, I shot in 16 and I shot in HD, and I love mixing formats. And I thought, okay, let's take up the challenge and use Super 8. Super 8 is actually hard because you have to do all kinds of things, even if its exposure is automatic. If you don't have enough light, you don't have an image. So what happened is that my images were really dark, and it pushed me. That's why I said, you know, sometimes you don't get what you want, and then you work with what you have, and it transformed the film. And at this point I said, okay, let's go full throttle and let's create some kind of roller coaster ride where you have gun, violence, and sex, and coming from toys, and make the viewer on the formal level make some kind of violent, you know, because it's almost a visual and auditory harassment because it's so flickering. But there's no superimposition, there's no trick, there's no effect, you know, it's all playing with like 3 frames, 4 frames, because the eye perceived an object or perceived an image after 3 frames. So
I always find that phenomenal that it's after 3 frames that you just.
I think I spoke too much.
No, are you kidding me? No, it's very interesting. I think coming from a perspective of a child, we sort of, you know, our imaginations as children run wild, and I think when you're a filmmaker, that continual imagination grows into adulthood too. But when you're a child, the way you imagine, look at things, you can be scared by your own toys in your bedroom, you know, and you could be influenced, and that's why, you know, children have these horrible dreams about crazy little things that happens, and, you know, the thought process, even though they're not adults yet, is kind of there, you know what I mean? So I actually found that very interesting because, you know, I used to have toys in my bedroom that I think I used to frighten and like put under the bed, you know, or I'd watch a movie and be influenced by certain things. So it was kind of really interesting to see that in a filmmaking perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tribute to the imagination process, and you know, how the imagination at the same time allows you to free yourself from a horrible world,
Yeah.
you know. But at the same time, this imagination also can I mean, in a dream or in a nightmare, can also make you even scared, like scarier, right? So it's like a double bind: imagination as a savior, and imagination as some kind of jail where you duplicate what you have in your mundane world, and it becomes nightmarish. So it's like, you know.
But you said you were inspired by, you know, sort of, you know, going to this art gallery, but Charles Lawson as well. Where did you kind of feel like, I want to make a film out of this? Like,
when it comes to sound, like when I was working with the image and I started doing like these flickering things, playing with frames, so that I'm playing with the audience, what it captures, what the eye captures, what and I thought I need the sound. So I've always loved Charles Lawton, and I don't know if you know it, but the Big Lebowski, the last line when he said, "The dude doesn't abide," or like well, comes from Charles Lawton. Lillian Gish, at the end of the film, she said she evokes the resilience of children, and she said they don't abide, you know, and it's, you know, there's something resilient about children.
Yeah, we set rules up for ourselves when we're adults and we have to follow them, but when you're children, it's just openness to what's around them. But that's very, I mean, obviously experimental film, it's a whole different genre, and like you say, you kind of capture so much in such a small periods of moments and in 3 frames, to be frank. But what was kind of some of your biggest challenges that you had in making it?
So to answer fully your question before, like the audio, Charles Lawton tribute came into the audio. I needed the audio, so I got the film and I got the making of Charles Lawton, so I didn't have the music. And I pull out some of the, even you hear his voice, "Children, come in," it's his voice.
Oh, wow.
So the film works, you know, an experimental film can work literally. I mean, it's never very literal, but it can work on many levels depending on your investment, on your knowledge.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
Someone who knows Charles Lawton, Night of the Hunter, will totally understand that the last line, it's a hard world for little thing, and it's Lillian Gish messing up her line, because at the end she says, it keeps repeating, it's a hard word on little things. And if you hear the last line, she keeps saying it's a hard world for little things. And then at the end, she's like, it's a hard world on little things. But I took that on a formal level. You know, these frames are little things. You can exert violence on them. And that's what you did in the edit. And that's what you do also on the spectator when you flicker. It's very brutal. I had people who say, I can't stand it. It's just too violent.
Well, I mean, you know, it's also we have, this is going on in our world. We have a lot of things in the world that is, you know, so we can't be shy of that almost, really, you know.
And I'm very honored that, you know, you know, like the range of film yesterday was wide, and I'm happy that you saw. I mean, it started with a very strong documentary, then it becomes more comedic, and, you know, there was many genres.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate that, because we like to take people on a journey in a short period. And actually bringing me on to my next question, what was it like to have your film selected for New Filmmakers LA?
Well, it was a surprise, and, you know, like I did make, as I told you, I didn't make this film because I needed to make something, and I'm working on a portrait of 2 centenarians. They are a couple in LA. He's 100, they became famous because he's writing his memoirs right now. He's 102 years old. She's 101 years old.
Wow.
She's 100-year-old. And so together they are 203 years old. I'm sorry, he's 103 years old. So they are a couple. They live in LA. They're sharp as tack. And I made a documentary not about aging, which is what I wanted to do, but I wanted to make a documentary about what it is to have a life behind, what it is to excavate, how memories can come back in so many different ways. And he was a photographer, so it's also a mixture of Super 8, etc., etc. But to respond to your question, so I needed to make that little film. And then when you said, "Oh, come," I'm like, "Wow, this is great," because I'm going to meet like other people, and my festival usually. I screen in Europe because my first film was a documentary on Kosovo, and so yeah, it was an amazing experience, and you guys were really well organized. It was really beautiful experience.
Oh,
like
well, we
beautiful memory, like really beautiful memory, and the audience is very nice. Felt like, yeah, they were open to
Very
experimental
supportive, yeah.
film, you know.
Yeah.
And it was, you said, you know, the audience for an experimental, you have different modes of filmmaking, and we have to honor them all. You know,
Yeah.
I love everything. I love Hollywood. I love experimental. Not everything in Hollywood, but you know, but if you give someone a dish, the same dish over and over, at one point it doesn't become palatable. And I think that, you know, an experimental film, it's like another way to engage with audiovisual material.
Yeah.
And I feel like what I wanted is that I wanted the viewer to imagine. I wanted to leave that space, that gap for the viewer to say, well, I want to speculate about the meaning of this film, or about the story, about, you know, what it triggers in me, as opposed to giving him like, okay, go and laugh.
No, exactly. It's a whole different world. I personally am a huge fan of the genre, and I think it leads well into many other genres when you understand experimental film. But you know what I love about Sonja is that you answered so many of my questions, because you just covered with this amazing knowledge about your filmmaking world, which is truly wonderful. I'm excited to see your next project. That looks really, really exciting as well. It's really, really good. And I think all of your great influences, you know, from being born in France, living here, have Serbian background, Italian, I think all these greatness, you know, is such a great essence to your filmmaking and your passion, most importantly, as well. So listen, Sonja, thank you so much for sharing your film. We appreciate you, and we want to see much more of your work. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.